You didn't come here to gamble, not deep down. Maybe at first this felt like a game, a way to escape, a fast track to freedom. But now it feels different. You've seen the chaos, you've lived it, the late nights, the overthinking, the second guessing. You've stared at charts until your eyes burned, flipped from one strategy to another, hoping this time it works. You felt the sting of losses that made you question everything, even yourself. But you're still here, and that means something. It means that beneath the confusion, beneath the fear, beneath the emotional roller coaster, you still believe this is possible, that there's a version of you who can do this, a version of you who doesn't just trade, but trades with purpose, with discipline, with clarity. And that's exactly why this story matters. Because I've lived that chaos too. I've been the trader with too many setups, too many indicators, too much noise in my head, and I've paid for it. With money, yes, but more painfully, with my peace of mind. And I'm here to tell you something most people won't. You don't need more strategies. You need one. Just one setup, one pattern, one process, mastered so deeply that you stop reacting to the market and start commanding it. This isn't about being perfect. It's not about avoiding losses forever. It's about simplicity, focus, consistency. It's about trading in a way that aligns with your psychology, your personality, your time, your rhythm. Because in the end, the traders who make it aren't the ones who know the most. They're the ones who repeat the best. This audiobook isn't a how-to guide. It's a journey, a psychological deep dive. It's a mirror you hold up to yourself, and what you'll see is the truth most traders are too afraid to face. The setup you're searching for, the edge you think you're missing, the clarity you crave, it's already inside you. You just haven't given it the space to grow. You've been too busy collecting, switching, chasing, and now it's time to stop. Time to choose, to commit, to own your approach. Because the moment you stop trying to master everything and start mastering one thing, everything changes. So take a breath, set the noise aside, and let's begin this journey together. Welcome to the power of one setup. Chapter 1. The Chaos of Choice. You didn't start out thinking you'd end up overwhelmed. In the beginning, it was all so exciting. Charts, patterns, strategies. Everywhere you looked, there was a new video, a new mentor, a new secret formula. One strategy promised quick profits. Another preached patience. One said, scalp the market. Another whispered, swing is king. You tried to learn them all. And that's when it began. You'd open your laptop with hope and close it in confusion. You'd start the day bullish and end it bitter. Your screen turned into a war zone of indicators, moving averages, Fibonacci lines, RSI signals, volume clouds, everything all at once. You told yourself, maybe I just need one more tool. But deep down, you were drowning in noise. Each day was a gamble. You'd hop from one strategy to the next, hoping this one would finally click. One day it was VWAP rejections. The next it was supply-demand zones. And then you heard about this magical 9 EMA strategy. Then ICT concepts, then volume profile, then Wyckoff. You weren't trading setups anymore. You were chasing setups. Let's be honest, you weren't really trading at all. You were reacting, clicking, hesitating, regretting. You thought you were adapting, but really you were just lost. Because no one talks about the downside of too much information. No one tells you how exhausting it is to carry 10 strategies in your head at once. How paralyzing it is to see 5 different signals at the same time, all screaming different things. One says go long, one says short, and another whispers, wait. So what do? You hesitate. And in that hesitation, the market moves without you. You enter late, you exit early. You doubt your entry, you second-guess your exit. You analyze the trade after it's over and convince yourself you should have used a different method altogether. You weren't failing because you didn't have knowledge. You were failing because you had too much of it, and none of it had roots. The truth hit you during a losing streak. A streak so brutal, you didn't just lose money. You lost your confidence. You lost your sleep. You lost yourself. You sat there, staring at the charts, heart pounding, palms sweating, not because of the volatility, but because you didn't trust yourself anymore. You asked, "Why can't I win consistently?" But deep down, you already knew. It wasn't the market, it wasn't the setup, it wasn't even your risk-reward. It was the chaos. The chaos of jumping between strategies like a trader with no identity, a trader with no center. That's when something inside you cracked, not in weakness, but in clarity. You didn't need more strategies. You needed fewer. You needed to master one thing, just one. Something repeatable, simple, understandable. Something that wasn't based on randomness, but on structure. Something you could wake up every day and know how to approach. So you made a decision. A bold one. You said, "I'm going to commit to one setup. I don't care how long it takes to master it, but this is the hill I'm going to climb." And for the first time, you felt peace. It was like your trading desk took a deep breath, your screen cleared up, your mind settled. Because now there was no question what you were looking for. No second-guessing your chart, no bouncing between gurus, no analyzing 5 strategies for the same candle. Now you had a target, a rhythm, a focus. The setup didn't have to be magical. It just had to be yours. And what you discovered next shocked you. The market didn't change. You did. Your results didn't explode overnight, but your decisions became clearer. Your entries became more confident. Your exits became more mechanical. You stopped overthinking. You started executing. Because when you commit to one setup, you remove the biggest threat in trading, emotional chaos. The market will always be unpredictable, but you don't have to be. You can be consistent even if the market isn't, when your process is rooted in clarity. You don't need to predict everything. You just need one thing you understand deeply and the courage to wait for it. That's how you take back control. That's how you stop gambling and start trading. That's how you become a real trader, not a strategy collector. And that, right there, is when everything starts to change. Chapter 2. The Addiction to Variety. Let's be honest with ourselves here. Variety in trading can be intoxicating. You don't realize it at first, but the constant search for new strategies gives you a high, a strange sense of momentum. It feels like progress, but it isn't. You tell yourself you're learning, you say you're expanding your knowledge. You convince yourself that exploring more strategies is making you smarter, more versatile. But deep down, you're avoiding the hard part. You're avoiding the discipline it takes to stick with something. Because committing to one setup, that requires you to say no to the rest. And let's face it, that's scary. There's always that voice in the back of your head whispering, "But what if this other strategy works better? What if I'm missing out?" That's how the addiction begins. You binge watch YouTube videos, you scroll through Twitter threads at midnight, you download PDFs from 10 different coaches, you copy someone's fib levels today and experiment with someone else's breakout technique tomorrow. You're a Frankenstein trader, built from the parts of others, but with no heartbeat of your own. And yet, it feels productive, because every time you switch strategies, there's hope, a fresh start, a new promise, a clean slate. But the cycle always ends the same way. You enter a trade you don't fully understand, you hesitate, you micromanage, you lose, and you blame the strategy. Then what? You go searching again, another guru, another method, another edge. And every time you start over, you push mastery further away. Because mastery only comes through repetition, through boring, obsessive repetition. But repetition isn't sexy. You don't get dopamine for taking the same trade every day. You don't get likes or retweets for saying, I waited for my one setup today and didn't trade. No. You get applause for being fast, for being adaptive, for having 20 setups memorized. But what does that get you? Confusion, inconsistency, mental fatigue. That's the price of variety. Because variety in trading isn't flexibility, it's distraction. And distraction is expensive. You might not notice it immediately, but every new setup you chase takes a piece of your focus. Every new strategy you test steals a little more of your emotional capital, until one day you burn out. Not because the market was too hard, but because your mind was too scattered to fight the battle. And here's the part no one tells you. Every setup works for someone, but not every setup works for you. Your success doesn't come from copying what works for someone else. It comes from owning one thing deeply, so deeply that it becomes second nature. And the only way to get there? Cut the noise, kill the addiction, choose one hill to die on. That's when you stop being a tourist in trading and start being a builder of your own edge, your own process, your own conviction. And trust me, once you break the cycle of constantly chasing variety, you'll experience something rare in this game. Clarity. The charts will slow down, your mind will stop buzzing, and you'll start to see, really see, the market for what it is. Not a puzzle with 1,000 solutions, but a landscape waiting for your one clear approach. That's the moment you stop surviving trades and start commanding them. And it all begins with this one decision. I'm done with distractions. I'm going all in on one setup. That single sentence, it has the power to transform everything. Chapter 3. The Turning Point. There's always that one moment. It's not flashy. It doesn't come with fireworks or a breakthrough trade. It usually happens in silence, alone with your thoughts, and a deep, painful truth staring you in the face. That moment when you finally say, I can't keep doing this. You were tired, not just of losing trades, but of losing your sanity, losing your time, losing your self-respect. Because that's the part no one sees, right? They see the charts, the candles, the broker screen, but they don't see the mental cost, the emotional damage, the private spiral. They don't see you pacing around the room after a trade goes wrong. They don't see the pit in your stomach when you click buy and immediately regret it. They don't see the way your confidence erodes every time a winning setup fails because you never really understood it to begin with. You were drowning in almosts. Almost consistent, almost profitable, almost there, but never stable, never grounded. And one day, it just hit you. Not in anger, not in fear, but in exhaustion. You were tired of guessing, tired of experimenting, tired of waking up and not knowing who you were as a trader. So you stopped. You sat down, cleared your screen, closed every tab, shut off every video, and you asked the one question that changed everything. What setup do I understand best? Not the flashiest, not the one with the most views on YouTube, not the one that worked for someone else, the one that made sense to you, the one that felt natural, the one you could explain without notes or jargon. And the answer was right there, buried beneath all the noise. a setup you'd seen work before, a pattern that kept showing up, a rhythm in the chaos. Maybe it was a break and retest, maybe a trend line bounce, a simple pullback to the 20 EMA. Whatever it was, it clicked. Not because it guaranteed wins, but because it gave you something to build on. For the first time, you weren't just reacting to the market, you were choosing your ground. You were saying, this is where I fight. This is what I wait for. And you know what happened next? You didn't suddenly become a millionaire. You didn't suddenly win every trade. But your mind changed. The noise got quieter. The decisions became clearer. The charts felt less overwhelming. Because now you had a filter. Everything that didn't match your setup, you ignored it. Every flashy signal that didn't align with your system, you skipped it. And that discipline, that was your turning point. Because once you pick one setup and truly commit, you begin to shift from randomness to process. You become a student of one thing. You learn its edges, its traps, its optimal time of day, its behavior in trending markets versus choppy ones. And slowly it starts to become yours. Not something you copied, but something you own. That's when your confidence begins to rebuild, not because of profits, but because of clarity. And in this game, clarity is more valuable than capital. Because capital can disappear, clarity sticks with you. You stopped being a gambler the moment you chose one setup. And from that moment on, you were no longer trading to escape your job, or to prove yourself, or to hit some magical income goal. You were trading with purpose, not just to win, but to grow, to refine, to master something real. And that's where everything truly changes. Chapter 4. Building the Muscle of Mastery. So, you've chosen your setup. That moment of clarity, that breath of fresh air, it doesn't mean the hard part is over. In fact, this is where the real work begins. Now comes the repetition. Now comes the discipline. Now comes the test of whether you'll build mastery or run back to comfort when things get tough. Because let me tell you something brutal, something few traders will admit. Mastery is boring. It's not exciting to take the same trade every day. It's not thrilling to wait for hours and then decide not to trade. It's not glamorous to say no to setups that don't fit your rules, especially when they end up working out anyway. But that's what separates amateurs from professionals. Professionals aren't in this for the thrill. They're in it for consistency. They're in it to do one thing over and over again until it's almost automatic, like muscle memory. Because when you commit to one setup, you give yourself the space to see deeply. And that's where mastery lives, in the details. You start to notice small things others miss, the subtle shift in volume before a breakout, the way price reacts to a key level under different market conditions, the candle behavior in pre-market versus regular hours, the way a fakeout forms right before your signal. These aren't things you learn from a PDF. They're things you learn from experience, from taking the same trade hundreds of times, from seeing how it behaves in different seasons, in different market cycles, in different emotional states of your own. At first, it's frustrating. You'll make mistakes, you'll get shaken out, you'll miss entries, you'll doubt it. But slowly something begins to shift. You start recognizing your setup forming in real time. You feel the rhythm. You trust your process. You act decisively, not because of confidence in the market, but because of confidence in yourself. That's the moment when you stop hoping and start executing. You're no longer trying to catch every move. You're no longer feeling FOMO watching others trade random setups. You're focused, clear, grounded. You know your edge. You know when it's present and when it's not. and you have the strength to walk away when it isn't there. That's a different kind of power. Not flashy, not loud, but unshakable. You no longer react emotionally to every candle. You no longer feel the urge to overtrade. You're not chasing trades, you're waiting for them to come to you. That's the reward for building trading muscle. And just like in the gym, you don't build muscle by switching workouts every day. You build it by repeating the same movements with control, with consistency, with attention to detail. It's not sexy, but it's real. And real is what makes you dangerous in the best way. Because now, you're not gambling, you're not guessing, you're not impulsively entering trades you don't understand. You're trading like a sniper. You know your conditions, you've trained your eye, you've trained your mind. And this training, it becomes your foundation. Through it, you develop something rare in trading, emotional endurance. You don't get shaken by a red day, you don't spiral after a losing trade, you don't need 10 wins to feel worthy. You just need to follow your plan. Because you understand now, you're not trying to beat the market, you're trying to beat yourself. Your undisciplined self, your distracted self, your greedy, fearful, scattered self. That's the real game. And once you win that battle, once you master you, the setup almost doesn't matter anymore. Because now you can take any edge and make it yours. But it starts with one. One setup, one pattern, one repeatable process. That's how you build the muscle of mastery. That's how you become a real trader. That's how you stop flailing and start winning. Chapter 5. Filtering out the noise. Now that you've committed to one setup, something strange starts to happen. You begin to see how much noise you were living in. It's like stepping out of a crowded nightclub and finally hearing your own thoughts. The blaring indicators, the endless market opinions, the conflicting strategies, they all used to feel necessary, like tools in a toolbox. But now, you realize most of them were just distractions. You start to look at your trading screen differently. You remove the clutter. You strip away the unnecessary. You stop needing confirmation from 20 signals. You stop jumping into Discord to ask others what they think. You stop waiting for someone to validate your idea. Because you've already validated it with work. And in that silence, something beautiful appears. Clarity. You begin to filter your inputs like a sniper filters distractions on a battlefield. You don't need the latest news. You don't need to hear 12 conflicting opinions on Twitter. You don't need to chase the newest indicator on TradingView. You need focus. Because the market isn't the problem, it's neutral. It's your mind that needs taming. And the more focused your mind becomes, the easier it is to operate under pressure. To keep calm in a sea of red, to wait patiently in a sea of green, to act only when your setup truly appears, not because the candle looks nice or because someone else is trading, but because it meets your criteria. And that's the shift. You start to filter with conviction. Before, you were scared to skip trades. You'd ask, what if this one was the big move? What if I miss it? Now you think differently. If it's not my setup, it's not my trade. If I miss it, I didn't lose, it just wasn't for me. You stop chasing. You start selecting. And that's power most traders never feel. Because let's be honest, most traders are addicted to noise. They check 6 time frames for one trade. They zoom in and out, hoping to feel the answer. They try to merge 20 strategies into one Frankenstein system, and every trade becomes an emotional roller coaster. But when you only trade one setup, the game changes. You know exactly what you're looking for. You know what time of day it forms best. You know the volume you want to see. You know the market structure it fits inside. You know your entry, you know your stop, you know your target. It's not exciting, it's not flashy, but it's clear. And that clarity, it gives you freedom. Freedom from doubt, freedom from overload, freedom from regret. Because now, when you see a trade that doesn't fit your rules, you don't argue with it, you don't fight it, you just let it go. And letting go, that's the skill that saves your capital. That's the maturity that keeps you alive in the game. That's the difference between being busy and being profitable. Because real trading is not about doing more, it's about doing less with more precision. And you can't be precise when you're drowning in noise. So you make a new rule. If it doesn't serve my setup, I don't need it. That's your filter. And the better you get at filtering, the clearer your trades become, and the more consistent your results become, and the quieter your mind becomes. And in that silence, something finally emerges. Confidence. Not because you're right all the time, but because you're finally aligned. Conclusion. You've made it to the end, but really, this is the beginning. The beginning of a different kind of trading life, not one where you rely on luck or the latest trend or someone else's strategy, but one where you own your edge. You've seen what happens when you try to juggle too much. You've lived in the storm of strategy overload, and you know how exhausting it is. You know what it feels like to doubt every entry, question every decision, and lose not just money, but confidence. But now, you know the way out. And it's not more knowledge. It's not more indicators. It's not a new secret YouTube video. It's one setup, executed with clarity, repeated with discipline, refined with experience. Because that's where consistency comes from. Not from being right all the time, but from acting consistently regardless of the outcome. You've learned that mastery isn't loud. It's quiet. It's boring. It's the trader who sits for hours and takes one clean trade. It's the trader who walks away when the setup isn't there. It's the trader who no longer feels FOMO because they trust their system. That's who you are becoming now. And the beauty of this path? It's yours. You're no longer copying. You're creating. You're no longer looking around for answers. You're looking inward. You've filtered the noise. You've committed to simplicity. And you've taken the first real step toward becoming the trader you were meant to be. There will still be losses. There will still be days where you feel unsure. But now you have something you didn't before. Alignment. Your mind and your method finally working together. And that's what builds longevity. That's what builds peace. That's what allows you to show up each day without the weight of 1,000 strategies pulling you in 1,000 directions. Because when the market opens tomorrow, you'll know exactly what to look for. You'll wait patiently for it. You'll execute without hesitation. Not because you're fearless, but because you've trained for this, because you've done the work, because you've chosen your ground. And that choice, well, it changes everything. So wherever you are in your journey, whether you're just starting out or deep in the trenches, remember this: one setup, one edge, one path, done well is enough. Trust it, refine it, and own it. Because the power of one setup, it's not just about trades, it's about who you become by mastering it.